Mycoverse. Hello, my friendly peoples. It's July 2019, and I just got off the phone with Wyatt Bryson of both Mycolab Solutions and Jewels of the Forest, which he formed alongside with his brother, Hunter. This guy is really cool. He and his family live in Northern California, where they're deep in the world of mycology. They come from an honest, genuine place of love and compassion for the environment, and they really just want us all to learn about mushrooms so that we too can enjoy the benefits of fungi while simultaneously helping to create a stronger, healthier, self-sustaining environment. They recently opened their commercial kitchen and retail storefront in Sebastopol, California, where you can find all sorts of edible mushroom products, including their flagship product called Shroom Snack. Now, I want to read you this bio on their website, shroomjerky.com, before we jump into the interview. Here it goes. Quality products made with care. Jewels of the Forest Farms specializes in exotic gourmet mushrooms and provides you unique mushroom food products. Our flagship product is Shroom Snack Premium Mushroom Jerky. This vegan jerky is a nutritious and delicious option for anyone who craves healthy snacks. Spice up your favorite dish or munch a bag on the couch with your special someone. From hikers on the trail to the entrepreneur up late creating the next social revolution, Shroom Snack go with every occasion. Premium mushroom jerky will leave you feeling magical and salivating for more of that stimulating umami flavor. I really enjoyed talking with Wyatt. In this episode, he tells a story about how he started out growing mushrooms in Hawaii, and then he moved back to their family farm in Occidental, California, and as he continued on with his journey, they started teaching others how to grow mushrooms, and it's a fun story, and honestly, I hope you enjoy it, and here we go. Wyatt, how are you?
Good, Nathan. Really nice talking with you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I wanted to kind of start out and ask you what your favorite mushroom is.
Well, my favorite mushroom is probably lion's mane right now. I think lion's mane is... just hearing a lot of stuff about its medicinal properties for memory and just mental cognitiveness. And I'm actually just ordering some more lion's mane focused supplements and stuff. So, yeah, I think it's a great one to eat. I think in our area, in a lot of areas, not too many farms and people are growing it. And it's a great, delicious mushroom. You can make many dishes with it, and it's kind of different. You know, it looks different. It's got a different texture. It's kind of neat.
It's a cool one. Have you seen it in the wild yet?
Not really around where we are.
Right.
I haven't seen it. I mean, I've seen it growing. I've grown it before on sawdust blocks, but not really out in the wild. I have not encountered it yet.
Gotcha. What I don't mean to jump around too much, but in Hawaii, how different is like mushrooms growing in the wild there versus mushrooms growing in the wild here? Because I've seen just the difference between like Santa Cruz and San Diego. So how much different is it like over on the islands versus here?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of different species, and because it's an island, you know, it's remote, first of all. So there's kind of a bunch of different species that you won't really find on the mainland. And, that agriculturally, they're really restrictive on bringing certain agricultural strains in, so plants and mushrooms, so you have to really watch out. And that was kind of the one thing when I was there, ordering spawn and new species of oysters. I never ran into any problems, but, you could, I guess, if they really flagged it and stuff. But first of all, I'm not really great at identifying. I know how to cultivate, and I know a lot about mushrooms and stuff. But as far as identifying, I've not really focused too much of my energy on that. And I usually go with people that really know what they're doing. If you want to get more into the real identification side, I mean, I know the basics, bolete, chanterelles, candy caps, oysters, And then, but yeah, finding new species and stuff like that, I really go with someone that there's a lot more people that are way more knowledgeable.
As you
Hawaii
should.
for cultivation.
Yeah.
There's a Hamakua mushrooms on the Big Island, and they produce a lot of mushrooms locally. And then there's a couple different farms on Oahu. I can't remember the name of it, but they produced portobellas. And I was growing some oyster mushrooms over there, some yellows, and the de jour, the pink oyster mushroom, which they both kind of like warmer temperatures and climates.
Cool. So Wyatt Bryson, Mycolab Solutions. I'm going to read something. It says, saving the world one mushroom at a time. And so for me, just looking at everything you have on your website, your Instagram feed, watching videos, kind of seems like you and your family have built and are continuing to build a genuine, honest organization that really you guys are just spreading love and knowledge to anyone interested in mycology. And it doesn't take long for anyone to figure out once you go down this rabbit hole of mushrooms and what they can do for you. They're just amazing. And as I said before, I want you to kind of tell us your story. Tell us, you started in Hawaii, it seems like, or I think you did. Just how you went from mushrooms weren't really a part of your life to now you have a lab and you're making mushroom jerky. Just kind of take us down that rabbit hole, if you will.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story. I grew up in Occidental, California, and I live now on my 15-acre farm, which my great-grandfather bought way back in the day, and it was undeveloped. And when I was a little baby, and my dad built our house up here, and carved all the roads and made it into our land and our farm. And I was living in Hawaii and on Oahu for like 8 years. And back in college, as a kid, I had gone mushroom hunting with my friends, and we had been exposed to mushrooms around the area, but it didn't really take a center stage in my life. We'd always go hiking, and we'd always find cool mushrooms and stuff. We'd find stuff to eat and bring it home. And in college, I got exposed to the new kind of PF Tech method for cultivating psilocybin species.
PS.
And I tried that out and epically failed. I don't think I really had any clue at that time what sterile technique was and what was really going on. I don't think I had the understanding behind it.
Yeah.
It wasn't till in Hawaii that I was working with a friend, and she was doing farmers markets for a portobello mushroom farm over in Honolulu. And it kind of piqued my interest. I was like, wow, they were selling really well at the farmers markets. And I was kind of looking for a hobby, and I've always really been into science and sustainability. And I really wanted to, always kind of find my niche and my calling. And I eventually found it in mushroom cultivation, and then really kind of promoting and educating people on the simplicity of mushrooms and how they can be grown very simplistically and low-tech methods, which, back in, college, I wish I kind of knew and had that resources. And nowadays, I think there's a lot of really great resources for people to learn how to grow mushrooms simply and low-tech and using everyday equipment from around their house and that they can easily obtain. So we were looking for some projects to do, and I was looking on Craigslist for sterilizers and pressure cookers. I had watched a series on YouTube called Let's Grow Mushrooms. I think it's by Roger Rabbit. It's a really great series.
Nice.
And I definitely suggest anyone kind of getting into mushrooms to get that don't want to just gloss over it, but get into more of the real techniques and scientific aspect of it, to watch those videos, because it takes you through lessons to going through all of it.
Roger Rabbit.
So watch that. Yeah, Roger Rabbit.
Okay, cool.
It's on YouTube. Let's Grow Mushrooms. It's like I think there's like 15 videos or something.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's a great resource. YouTube in general is a great resource now because there's just so many people posting videos, and you can learn all sorts of different techniques and tricks to be able to grow mushrooms, but there's going to be some general processes and protocols that are going to be the same across the line for most all species.
That's actually
that you're trying to cultivate.
Yeah, that's where I found you. I was looking for just how to do it at home, and I found a really cool video you made. What's the account that you have on YouTube for?
The account on YouTube is under Mycolab Solutions, MYCOLAB.
That's actually what you have for all of them. You have Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, the website, which is www.mycolabsolutions.com, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that website is super old. I haven't really done anything with it for a long, long time. So hopefully we'll be getting that updated and kind of linking it with our other side of a business, which is Jewels of the Forest. So we actually named our farm Jewels of the Forest when I moved back from Hawaii. I brought back my whole lab that I had bought in Hawaii. I was looking on Craigslist and I found an autoclave. So it was like $1,000. So we went to go look at it, and it turned out this guy had this whole lab that he was selling. They were actually helping develop a naturally decaffeinated coffee plant. Nice. With UH
What is UH Manila?
The University of Hawaii.
Okay.
Manoa.
Cool. Got it.
And they lost their funding kind of when the markets went down. And then, they were selling everything. So I got a huge laminar flow hood. And that's basically a big HEPA filter that puts out like 99.996% clean air flow.
Gotcha.
And you have a fan that's blowing the air through this HEPA filter, and then you're doing your clean work in front of the HEPA filter. So you'd be doing stuff like making transfers on agar plates, or doing spawn-to-spawn transfers, or working with liquid cultures, initial inoculation of spawn. And so a HEPA filter is one of the basic pieces of equipment that you're going to need if you're going to get into spawn production and to make cultures. You can get away kind of with a glove box. And for anyone that's just starting out that doesn't want to put a bunch of money in it, a glove box is a great way to kind of create a sterile environment that you can do work in.
Gotcha.
And just look up how to make a glove box, sterile glove box on YouTube. And I should probably make a video on that. I've had a lot of requests, and I've actually been thinking about adding a class on how to do that. Because that's kind of what will really help you get started in your home to cultivating mushrooms.
Right. So
we got this huge, it's like 4 foot long laminar flow hood, and we got the autoclave, and basically we got tons of boxes of all sorts of lab supplies, glassware, incidentals, petri dishes. So I was pretty much set, and I immediately just started hitting the books and doing a lot of research, studying, how to work in the flow hood, how to, have proper sterile techniques so you're not getting contamination. And we started cultivating oyster mushrooms in Hawaii. And we were doing it outside in our backyard, and we would just get straw and put it in laundry baskets. And, it's so humid in Hawaii. You don't really need a greenhouse. You don't want them in direct sunlight all the time, but, sunlight is good for oyster mushrooms. And so we were doing that, and it was a lot of fun, and I really kind of got into it, started doing more research on the viability and profitability of actually making it into a business instead of just a hobby.
Yeah.
And that kind of, kept with me, and kind of soon after I decided to move back to the family farm and build a house and set up my lab and kind of start growing mushrooms professionally.
So you were saying you moved back to the farm and you built a house for your family, and you and your brother started working together then?
Yeah, so we started working then. His name's Hunter, and he's been a chef for 16 years.
Nice.
And he's just burnt out on restaurant. He was actually like a sous chef at this really nice French restaurant, and they were going to make him head chef, and then ended up selling the restaurant and closing down. So he was kind of looking for something, and we started growing mushrooms together on the property, and we were kind of focusing on also more of the back-end production, so producing spawn and making plates, agar plates that we'd sell on eBay, selling mushroom kits. He'd bring in the oyster mushrooms that we'd produce and bring to his restaurant, and had connections with other restaurants.
Cool.
And so that's kind of why we got into the farming, because we had those connections with markets that were already, had a demand for fresh gourmet local mushrooms.
How many different restaurants were you distributing to?
We had like 5 ones that were pretty solid. So,
nice.
My brother-in-law, my Hunter's wife's brother, has a couple Thai restaurants in Sonoma County.
Cool.
And so, we get the mushrooms and a couple of the restaurants and connections that he had from previous jobs and just knowing a lot of chefs.
A restaurant? Would you kind of go through the chef or through like the restaurant owner? Like if someone was going to grow mushrooms and they were interested in doing what you guys did, like linking up with restaurants, is it kind of easy to get into that, or like?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first part, is probably the chefs you want to kind of connect with, because, most of the time they're the ones creating the dishes. Right. And, if they like your mushrooms, they're going to buy it if it's a good price and, it's good quality.
Cool.
So definitely, anyone that wants to try to market their mushrooms, hit up natural grocery stores where they have great bulk sections and vegetables, and restaurants. Definitely just go in and ask for the chef and just say, hey, I have mushrooms for sale. I grow them locally. And a lot of times chefs will be really excited and stoked to have such frech product.
Do you have to have do you have to have any type of like certification or anything?
Definitely so wild mushrooms, yeah, it's getting pretty tight with being, selling wild mushrooms. Cultivated mushrooms, definitely check with your local or regional, laws and stuff, because yes, there are licenses that you will need for sellers, permits, and for health and safety reasons as well. So I'm not quite sure, as far as different places, California does require seller's permits and stuff. But, if you're friends with people, you're not doing it to make a living as per se.
Right.
You can,
probably slip under the radar and just have fun.
Yeah, definitely. If you're really trying to push it as a business, definitely follow all laws and regulations in your area. But, if you're safe, you're doing it right, there shouldn't be any problems. It's really hard to mistake most of the gourmet mushrooms. And if you're doing it right, you're not going to be getting any other weird stuff growing in your fruiting room.
So you've been talking a lot about your experience with growing mushrooms, and I'm realizing that as a newcomer to it, we need to just talk about it. So let's do the crash course, kind of like for someone starting at home. doesn't have any experience growing mushrooms, what do you need, like, to start?
So the basic first things that you're definitely going to need are spawn. So that's the mushroom seed. So if you're not producing your own spawn, you can purchase it online. You could purchase it at other local farms in your area, mushroom farms. You could always ask them, see if they're producing spawn, and if you could purchase some. But there's some really good online sites to buy mushroom spawn. Amisil is one. Aloha Medicinals is another one. They have a huge library of all sorts of mushrooms, and they make spawn on request, and then they also have some in stock, like just the regular kind of more common ones they have on stock, like a couple species of shiitakes, oyster mushrooms, probably some mycologies, and other species that are pretty common.
Cool.
So the first thing you're going to need is your seed, your spawn, and then for actual equipment, you're definitely going to need a pressure cooker, which are readily available, new from all sorts of appliance stores. Walmart, I think you could get them. They're probably cheap there. You could buy them online, Amazon. But I look mostly locally on Craigslist and at garage sales because, a pressure cooker is like one of those things that everyone kind of has in their kitchen, but they've maybe only used it like once a year,
Right.
Unless you're doing canning and stuff. So you can find them readily available. So a pressure cooker, and what that's going to do is going to give you the ability to sterilize your grains if you're inoculating and trying to make more spawn, and also small amounts of substrate depending on how big your pressure cooker is. So that's another piece of equipment, the pressure cooker. And then if you want to kind of do more bulk stuff, I recommend getting the outside propane burner that you can put like large pots on. And the best I've found is to buy a turkey deep frying kit. And you could get those on Amazon for like $60-$70.
Cool.
There's some that are more expensive, but I found that's like one of the cheapest. And I try to get the more sturdier ones that have a wider base, because I like to put a 55-gallon drum on it outside. And what we're using that for and doing is trying to pasteurize like bulk substrate. And so most common, and what I suggest for anyone trying to start out, is do with oyster mushrooms because they're so easy.
Okay.
They're very strong, fast-growing. You'll see results really quick. They're hardy. They can outcompete a lot of contaminants and competitors. And they can grow on straw, hay, horse hay, basically. And so, if you live in the city, places to get straw and hay might be a little bit more difficult. They'll also grow on sawdust, and you can get sawdust from like woodworking shops or places that work with wood.
Yeah.
I live out in the country, so I have easy access to straw and at the local feed store and grains that I buy there. You have your spawn, which is your seed. You have your straw, which is your bulk substrate. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to pasteurize your straw in water is one of the easiest ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually go to like the local coffee roasters.
Okay.
And I ask for their old burlap sacks. That's another thing. If you live in the city, growing on coffee grounds, you can grow oyster mushrooms on coffee grounds, and that's a readily available substrate that you can buy. So once you kind of look into the world of mushrooms and oyster mushrooms and see what they they can grow on any kind of woody fibrous material, and they grow a lot on agricultural waste. So if you could find access to any of those things, then you kind of have your bulk substrate side covered. You could also buy it online through mycology websites, and you can see stuff on eBay and Etsy and stuff too. So you have your spawn, you have your substrate, you're pasteurizing your substrate. So pasteurization and sterilization are two different things. Sterilization, you're completely killing off any sort of microbes, bacteria, and creating a clean slate, basically, that you're going to introduce your mycelium, which is your spawn. And the spawn is just a more nutrient-dense, like grain. I use most of the time a millet seed, which you can buy. Yeah, millet. It's really cheap. I think I buy it for like $11 for a 25-pound bag. And it's very nutrient rich. You have to add a couple like nutritional supplements, some gypsum, and even some wheat bran, or you could add to it. And
is that necessary? Like, should you definitely put that in there? The gypsum and wheat bran?
What's that?
Should you definitely put gypsum and wheat bran in, or is that just kind of an optional thing that helps?
It's optional. It helps. I use wheat bran like in a lot of other mixes, like sawdust mix and stuff. It's great to add wheat bran. It adds some, other nutrients, some, nitrogen and stuff in there.
Cool.
Some more proteins and sugars that the mycelium will feed off of.
Cool.
So, yeah, go ahead.
No. So, yeah, you sterilize. Keep going with it. I'm sorry. So you have your pressure cooker, and you're going to sterilize the...
Let's just say you're buying your mushroom spawn, so you're not even worrying about how to manufacture your spawn or anything.
Sure.
You just want to make like your mushroom bags.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, oyster mushrooms are growing in like a polytubing or a plastic bag.
Okay.
And polytubing you could find on this website called Uline. Okay. They have all sorts of it's packaging material and stuff. But look up polytubing, and it comes on a roll, which is kind of nice because you can make it however long you want it. And you're going to boil your straw, so you pasteurize it in the water. And pasteurization temperature, I believe, happens between like 140, 160 degrees. So you want to check the temperature of your water, and once it gets up to like 140, over 140, you want to leave your substrate in there, usually for about an hour or longer, depending on, how much you have in there and how dense it is. You just want to make sure that you're giving it enough time to fully pasteurize the middle of the bag, and it gets up to temperature inside the middle. So pasteurization, you're not completely making a clean slate for the mushroom mycelium to grow on, but you're killing off any contamination, other fungi, but you're still leaving some beneficial microbes that will remain in the straw that actually helps promote the mycelium growth.
Cool.
So, so that's why you pasteurize straw. You can completely sterilize it, but kind of what you're doing is going from a smaller amount of spawn to a larger amount of substrate that the mycelium is going to digest and eat off of.
Cool.
Basically, when I teach a class, that's exactly how we do it. We boil it in a 55-gallon drum outside, and then we get off a table, and I put some plastic on there or spray it down with some alcohol or some sort of sterilizer. And then we just empty out the straw on the table. We let it cool. And once it comes to kind of a room temperature, it's not really hot to the touch or steaming, then we just mix in the spawn. We break up the spawn in the mushroom bags and then open them up. And you kind of want to have clean hands or gloves. At this point, you're not going to be completely sterile. because you're now outside an environment. You're not in a clean room, a sterile place. But that's okay because, you think about it in nature, the mushroom mycelium is having all sorts of competition from, every angle.
Yeah.
And so at least you're giving it a little bit better foothold to outcompete other competitors. Because life has a way of finding, the cracks and any way it can to start life,
It definitely does.
So, yeah, so you got to watch out. There's certain times where you really need to be sterile and need to be careful, and other times you can get away with it. And I think just practice is one of the best things you could do for mushroom growing, because you're going to learn techniques and just you're going to mess up and you're going to have failures, and that's okay. But you just kind of think about what you did, and if you could think about it in kind of a scientific way, like I did this and then I got this result, maybe I'll do it this way next time and see if I get that same result or not.
A journal going. That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely keep a logbook, and some sort of notes will really help, because you might not remember, but you can look back on your notes and see, if you did this or did that, or what temperature you had it at, and how long you did, and oh, well, that wasn't a long enough. Maybe I'll do it, another half an hour next time. And you do it and you get way better results.
Yeah, so it's literally a science project for sure.
Yeah. So mushroom, cultivation with oysters is pretty easy, and it doesn't take a lot of equipment. You just impulse sealer, something to seal the bags is good to have. You can also tie them off on the bottom. And once you mix up all the spawn and this straw, you're just going to stuff it in your polytubing. You can make the bags. Some people make them really long and they hang them from the ceiling or some sort of rafter system. Some people grow, the logs bags on a shelf. Some people stack them. There's many ways to do it, so just kind of look online and look at your space and see what resources you have, and you can kind of model your grow room or fruiting room out of kind of what you have available to you.
Cool.
And then mushrooms breathe oxygen and expel CO2. So you have to allow the mycelium to breathe. So you're going to slit a bunch of holes in your plastic bag, which is your mushroom log now, and it will be able to have gas exchange. The mushroom mycelium will breathe, and you want to keep those logs in a dark place, and you want to look at the species that you're growing, and it should kind of tell you what temperature to try to have it at.
Okay.
Mushrooms need a lot of humidity, so for humidity in my grow room and my inoculation room, I use, you can get the little baby humidifiers.
Yeah.
Try to get the ultrasonic ones, and I find those at the Goodwill and, all the time for super cheap.
Cool.
If you want to spend more money, you can definitely do that. But even get those little ultrasonic pucks on eBay, and you put them in water and they create a mist, the misters.
Yeah.
So those are great. And you're going to take your bag, and now you have it mixed in there, and what you're going to want to do is allow the mushroom mycelium to completely take over the straw. It'll be completely inoculated. So you have it in your dark room, usually a kind of a separate room than your fruiting room, and you're going to let them sit in there until they become completely white with the mycelium. And at that point, you're going to then take them out and put them into your fruiting room, and you're going to expose them to oxygen and to light and to probably a slight temperature change. And that's going to help initiate the mycelium from its vegetative state, where it's colonizing all that straw, to its reproductive state, its fruiting state. And that's when it's going to start producing the fruit bodies, which are the mushrooms that we all know and love.
How long about does that take to get to that point, from when you hang your bag of straw and the mycelium's in the vegetative state till the fruiting point where you're going to open it up?
So it depends on what species you're growing, but like generally for oyster mushrooms, if if you're, for the inoculation phase, it kind of depends on how much spawn you're putting in there. Usually a ratio from 10 to 30% is good. So if you're buying your spawn, you're probably going to be using a little bit like lower, like in the 10 to 20%.
Yeah.
And it just means that with the less spawn in there, there's less of the little grains with the mycelium on it, or inoculation points. So it's going to take longer for all those little inoculation points to send out the hyphae of mycelium that will then join with the other inoculation points in there. So the more spawn you put in, the more inoculation points are there, and they're going to connect faster and completely colonize that substrate.
Yeah.
So since I can produce, like mass-produced spawn, I just like try to use as much as possible.
Nice.
So usually, depending on how big your bags are, I'd say like a week to 10 days to fully colonize.
Oh, wow.
And then probably about oyster mushrooms are really fast-growing. Certain species, some are slower. Like the king mushroom, I think, is a little slower.
Yeah.
But, a week to 10 days, and then, to 2 weeks or so, right around there. Let's say a week to 2 weeks. And then for your your fruiting, it's usually probably about 2 weeks or so.
Okay.
10 days to 2 weeks. And then usually you can get like two to three flushes. So a flush is basically when the mushrooms start fruiting and popping out of the little slits that you cut in your bag.
Yeah.
They're going to pretty much all come out at one time. And then you're going to harvest it all, and that harvest was the first flush.
Okay.
So then it's going to kind of go into a dormant phase, or not a dormant phase, but it's going to kind of restart pinning again. And so when the mycelium's pinning, it puts out these little primordia, and you'll see them. They look like little dots, and they center around where you cut the holes, because that's where there's having more oxygen and gas exchange. So you'll see the little dots, and then each one of those little dots is forming the fruiting body, the caps and heads of the mushrooms.
That's so...
So, after your first flush, then it's usually like another 10 days or so, 10 days, before it will flush again. And usually, kind of as a rule of thumb, you're going to get half amount of mushrooms on each flush. So say you got, 5 pounds on your first flush, you'll probably get somewhere around 2 to 3 pounds on your second one. And oysters are pretty amazing in the sense that their bioefficiency can be really high, and even over 100%. So
what does bioefficiency mean?
So bioefficiency basically is, so if you have, say, 10 pounds of substrate and spawn that you're putting in, that's your biomass.
Okay.
Okay? The mushrooms will actually, so if it's 100% bioefficiency, you should get 10 pounds of actual mushrooms out of that. Some species have been seen up to doing like 250%. So,
wow.
I mean, that would be like off of a 10-pound block through all the flushes. It's using up all of the stuff in there, and you're getting, 25 pounds out of it.
Gotcha. Cool.
So bioefficiency is a neat one with a lot of these species. And mushrooms are like 90% water, so they require a lot of humidity the whole time. And, if you have a very humid room, they're sucking up a lot of that water from the air.
Cool.
And, yeah.
Nice. So
that's kind of a little crash course into, oyster mushroom production. There's a lot more, there's nuances and a bit more to it and stuff. But,
for sure.
With online, you can find out, all these things and step-by-step methods. And what I wanted to do with MycoLab Solutions, is really educate people and have fun with it. So, when we set up the lab, I was filming a lot of the progress we were making, and I started doing videos for people and stuff. And I kind of found out pretty quickly where people's interests were, and they were more towards, I mean, there was a lot of interest in cultivation in general, but kind of this monotub method, which is more geared towards specific species and strains of mushroom cultivation.
Dive into that, because I think that's what I saw. Your monotub is where you basically put it in a plastic bin, right? So instead of growing it from the bag, you pour the substrate into the bin, correct?
Yeah. So it's a different method here. So there's a couple. I've grown portobellas in a monotub, and a lot of people cultivate psilocybin strains and other hallucinogenic and magic mushrooms in them.
Cool.
So, as a company, I do not promote or condone any illegal activity. That being said, all mushrooms can be grown in a similar manner. So how about we talk about portobello cultivation in monotubs? So the monotub method is super simple. It kind of developed out of the PF Tech method. And a lot of these techniques were pretty much kind of devised in the 70s. And I think one of the first books that came out was Magic Mushroom Cultivation by Terrence McKenna and Kat Harrison.
Da-da-da.
So, yeah, and actually on my YouTube channel, I have a presentation given by Kat Harrison at the Sonoma County Mycology Association, SOMA. Cool. They have an amazing camp every year in Occidental, and it's just amazing. And I try to film as many of the workshops and classes as I can. So I have a bunch on there, and I have a bunch recorded. I just haven't really taken the time to edit them and get them up online, but that's definitely in the works.
Cool.
So yeah, monotub cultivation is really simple. It could be done in in a small environment. You could do it in a closet. You can do it basically, yeah. It
closet
doesn't take
in your
a lot.
garage. You can put it in a tent in your room. So many different places.
Yes, so many different places. A garage, grow tent. A lot of grow rooms, for cannabis are already set up with climate control systems.
Perfect.
And that's kind of like one of the big things you need to worry about is like, kind of having the right temperature. But in a small environment, you could easily control that.
Right.
And what's great about the monotubs is that they're basically like little humidity chambers.
Right.
So they're really keeping that humidity in there. And they're also keeping contaminants out. And you're able to use their individual kind of microclimates in their own. So if you get contamination in one, you could just remove that, and you're not getting contamination, hopefully, in your whole space.
Right.
So, monotubs, I recommend the 60-quart Sterilite, and they're stackable, so you could pretty much have, stacks all the way up to the ceiling. And you could put, I use for a heating element, you want something safe that's not going to catch on fire, so like no propane, no open heat sources. So I recommend if it's a really small space and you live in a warmer climate that doesn't have huge temperature swings, and you have it kind of insulated in the closet or in your space, I use just one of those like ribbed oil heaters, the plug-in ones.
Yeah,
like stand on the ground, they're ribbed, and they're not going to catch anything on fire. They won't get too hot to cause damage to anything. And you get off of eBay or online just these really simple temperature control units. There's a company called Inkbird.
Inkbird?
I think they're like Inkbird, yeah. They're like $30-$40. Just put in like temperature control unit into eBay and you can find them. But basically, they're like a little digital readout, and then they have a plug that one says cool, one says heat. And you plug your heater into the heat, and then for cooling, you can use a portable AC unit, or you can use an actual AC unit, like a window unit. That's a little bit, you have to mount it and do stuff for that. And
Right.
you can't have it just sitting in the room because it blows hot air out.
Mm-hmm.
And then cooling's a little bit more of a problem than heating because, those portable AC units can be kind of expensive. I was also playing around, and I think one of the most efficient ways is like those chillers. You could get like a fish tank chiller,
Mm-hmm.
and it basically pumps the water through and chills it. And then they have these units which are basically like radiators with a fan attached to them, and you hook that up to your chiller, and it puts cold water through the radiator, and as the fan blows on it, it cools the air. Like a swamp cooler, basically.
Yeah.
And it also adds humidity to the room, too, which is nice. So you're kind of doing two things at once.
That's cool.
Old cannabis growing equipment is really great. But the one thing with those like more expensive controllers, if they have a CO2 function,
mm-hmm.
with plants, you're trying to get a higher CO2 content in your room.
Right.
And with mushrooms, you're trying to get a lower CO2 content in the fruiting process for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, I've got a bunch of videos on there, and it's great that it's gotten a lot of views. I think the monotub one is like 400,000 views now, and I get questions all the time, and I really try to keep up and answer the questions because it's important. And I think the way this country's going with its attitude and viewpoint on psilocybin and its medicinal and healing benefits, I think and I hope that it will go somewhat the way that the cannabis has become more accepted.
Right.
It went through like a medical phase where you can only get it with a medical license, and then now it's slowly gone more into the mainstream, like where people can possess it and not feel afraid by the authorities. And
especially with psilocybin, that's super important because it's growing up with psilocybin, it's like you don't really get that opportunity as a young adult to experience it without fear, and that's a problem because it's such a profound experience you're having in this when you take it, and it can just do amazing things for just the psyche of your inner workings and everything. And we can dive down that rabbit hole another day, but it's cool. It's cool that to grow it, it's not that hard. It doesn't seem like it's that hard to do. And for something has not just psilocybin, but all mushrooms, like I love turkey tail, and I always tell this story. I made a tincture. I picked a bunch of turkey tail from the woods, and then I soaked them in alcohol for about 10 weeks. So it's super long. Like you can do it for 2 weeks, but I kind of just put it on the back burner and extracted a lot. And then I boiled the spent mushrooms down for about 2 hours and did like a 50-50. So it was like 25% alcohol. And I was taking it every day. About 2 weeks later, after taking it every day, my wife got strep throat. And then my daughter got a fever, and then my wife about a week later relapsed with strep. And throughout all of that, I'm taking care of both of them. I didn't even feel like I was going to get sick once throughout the whole thing. I'm like, thank you. So I make tea with it all the time. Now, like turkey tail is my jams right now. So
yeah. I since I've started taking medicinal mushrooms like on a regular basis, like I feel amazing.
Yeah.
I take this like chaga elixir blend. It's with chaga, turkey tail, and reishi.
Nice.
And it's made by this guy, the Chaga Company, and he's in San Francisco. Okay. And we first met him when we were doing festivals and stuff and other like mushroom fairs.
Mm-hmm.
And we quickly became friends, and I love his product. And he makes loose leaf teas and elixirs.
That's cool.
And so I just put a capful in my coffee every morning, or my tea.
Yeah.
And I just reordered. I was taking this Immune Assist 24/7 made by Aloha Medicinals.
Okay.
And I buy it in bulk, so I buy like a kilo of it, like 2.2 pounds.
We are committed.
We're actually a wholesaler.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So I usually capsule up myself and then take it. Or like if I make smoothies or like blended stuff, I'll try to put it in there.
Very cool. Are you still teaching classes like on a regular basis, or where are you guys at with that?
So after we were doing the mushroom farm and we were creating spawn, we started kind of consulting and helping people grow their own mushrooms. Mm-hmm. And what we wanted to do was kind of us be the spawn producers for our local farms.
Right.
But we wanted to take it a step further where we would make all the mushroom bags. So we would pasteurize all the substrate. We would make all the spawn. We would make the bags. And then every month, it would be like a plug-and-play system. We'd help farm set up their fruiting room, and we would inoculate, let all the bags fully colonize. And then every month or on their schedule, we would just, deliver how many ever bags they need. Cool. So they're just doing pretty much the harvesting, kind of the processing of it all. And because we kind of had like this business relationship with restaurants and stores and farmers markets, we would be able to kind of provide an avenue for people to sell it because, it's great to be able to grow all these mushrooms, and you can eat them yourself, but if you're growing a lot on a larger scale, you're going to need an avenue to do that. And that's kind of a whole nother side. It's like more of the business side, which some people are good at, but some people don't want to deal with that. Yeah. So we thought, creating kind of a co-op system where we can make all the same packaging and labeling, and we all collectively sell under one brand name. It would help promote, everybody being able to grow mushrooms, but also being able to sell without competing with each other, and just make it a lot easier for small farms and farmers that want to grow but don't want to have to go to farmers markets every week or go, run around to restaurants all day and dropping off or trying to sell them to them,
Yeah, that's cool. So are you, is that an idea still, or are you guys doing that right now? And have been doing it?
So, that's where I was going with this. So cool. We were kind of having that idea. We were looking for other ways to make money. It's hard to make a lot of money farming unless, you really have a niche or, you're in a special area where there's a lot of demand for your product and stuff. So we just weren't really there yet. And because my brother's a chef, we had played around with the idea of making value-added products out of the mushrooms we were growing. So we were doing this festival. We were doing a class at this ethnobotany festival that was actually put on by Kat Harrison. She's actually a really good friend. She lives in Occidental, and I grew up with her and Terrence's daughter, Clea McKenna. She was in my class, and then her son, Finn, is a really good friend of mine.
That's so cool.
So we all went to school together. She invited us to do a mushroom growing class, and we were like, hey, why don't we, make some jerky? I saw on a Kickstarter, someone had done a Kickstarter for mycology mushroom jerky.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, wow, if we could, make a healthy and, sustainable, good-tasting snack jerky, I mean, that could be $1 million idea right there.
Dude, yeah. I want some.
Sure enough. Yeah,
good.
Definitely. I'll send you some packs after this, and cool. I'm actually going to be putting a coupon code for your listeners up there, so we'll put it under the podcast name.
The jerky thing is cool because, I mean, with beef, it's red meat, and so there's a lot of people that, even if you're not vegan, like myself, I just growing up, there wasn't really a focus on diet and everything, but as I got older and smarter, it's like, okay, I don't really eat beef as much anymore, but I love beef jerky, and I don't eat it ever because of that. Like, I'll never go and buy a bag of beef jerky, but mushroom jerky, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. Oh,
that's such a good idea.
We actually really tried to focus on keeping that traditional, like, hard, chewy beef jerky texture and feel. So that's kind of what sets our mushroom jerky apart from a lot of the other mushroom jerkies on the market.
Yeah.
And when we started off and we started looking into the actual, building it into a food business, there was just one other mushroom company that was kind of big on the market. And so we were kind of the second big one out there. And now since then, there's like one locally that's popped up around my area.
Oh, man.
And then there's like 2-3 other kind of bigger mushroom farms that are getting into it and starting to create products.
Very cool.
Mushroom jerky or similar products.
Well, you guys have some work cut out for you there.
To grow.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got in there quickly, and we really focused on the social media aspect of it, because we were already doing that with Mycolab Solutions. And at this ethnobotany festival, like, we sold out of the batch Hunter made, like, a couple nights before, within an hour. And so we were like, okay, wow, our proof of concept was validated. We were like, all right, well, let's think about kind of changing gears. Another part of the inspiration from the jerky was Hunter's wife is Thai, and they're in Thailand actually right now. And she has some friends that kind of work in the mushroom farm industry. Mm-hmm. And so they had brought back a product that was like, it was more of a topping, but it was like little bits of the jerky, of mushrooms that were kind of like our jerky product now, but it was a lot different. Okay. So a lot of our flavor profiles for the jerky, which is called Shroom Snack, they kind of come from that Asian heritage and traditional Asian flavors.
Very cool.
So no, we're not really doing much. I've been up in the lab a couple times. I'm trying to like revive my cultures so they don't die out on me.
Yeah.
I've got this one strain of oyster mushrooms that this amazing mycologist named Alan Rockefeller, he's down in Oakland in the Bay Area.
Okay.
And he found a oyster mushroom growing on a pine tree up in Shasta County in the town of McLeod, where in May they have just an amazing mushroom festival there. It's called the McLeod Mushroom Festival.
Very cool.
And we've been a participant for 3 years now, selling our mushroom jerky and other like mushroom products. So I brought that back to my lab, and I took a sample of it and cultivated it. And it's a really vigorous, strong strain, because usually you don't really find them growing on those firs and pines. Really, they like more harder woods.
Right, like oaks and whatnot.
Yeah, so I actually gave some cultures to Alan and to a couple of the mycology societies down in San Francisco. It's BAM, which is the Bay Area Applied Mycology. Okay. And then the San Francisco Mycology Association, they put on a really good festival too. I think it's in November or December every year in San Francisco. And they were actually playing around with that strain, and I named it the McLeod oyster mushroom. And they were using it to digest cigarette butts and in microremediation to kind of break down oils and complex hydrocarbons. So I haven't spoken with them in a while, so I don't know what they're doing with it now, but I saw some test jars they were using it for to digest some stuff like that.
Yeah, oyster mushrooms.
Cool, and it was really working.
Oyster mushrooms, that's the next interview I'm trying to set up right now, is somebody to just dive down that and explain, because the first thing I got introduced with oyster mushrooms was Paul Stamets' experiment with the bus yard in New York, where there's all the oil from all these buses that were sitting in this yard, and
yep.
And so they, instead of paying, they're like, hey, let's have a competition and see who can clean it up the best. And out of the 3 of them that did it, the 2 other chemical or biological, I don't remember what the other people were using, but it wasn't mushrooms. And yeah, oyster mushrooms are pretty amazing, and I'm really excited to learn more about those. So that's cool. That's so cool, man. That's cool that they're like the easiest to grow and they're the hardiest, and that kind of makes sense too. Because if they can clean up the most toxic crap that we create, that would make sense that they could outgrow many competitors in the environment, and it would be easy to grow them. Cool.
Yeah, definitely. That I remember reading that too. That's kind of what really was one of the major things that got me really interested into the other aspects of mycology as a restorer. I mean, they are the soil makers. They're the decomposers. They create all the life that the plants come from, and a lot of fungi have a symbiotic relationship with specific trees or plants. And then a lot of fungi, which they're called endophytic fungi, they actually grow within the plants. And so what we're finding out is that certain medicinal properties that we attributed to certain herbs and plants, they're finding out that this endophytic fungi that's been growing inside the plants is actually what is giving them these medicinal properties. So kind of on the remediation side, one thing about oysters and kind of most mushrooms in general, basically our stomachs are on the inside and their stomachs are on the outside. So at the end of the hyphae, what they're doing is they're secreting enzymes that are, breaking down lignins and other materials that the mycelium is coming in contact with. And so with oil and stuff and hydrocarbons, they're able to secrete certain enzymes that help break down these complex molecules into simpler forms. And then kind of what happens is the whole biodiversity of the soil is taking over and doing its part. So then you have certain bacteria that are breaking down those smaller molecules into even smaller, other fungi that are doing the same. And then, you're getting this cleaning up of the soil, and it started with the mushrooms and the breaking down. Otherwise, there's not a lot of things that can break down these complex molecules.
Boom.
So one of the things I was doing as Mycolab Solutions was it was part of a community buy where we bought a culture of this fungi called P. microspora, Pestilopicus microspora, and they call that the plastic-eating fungus. There's, a lot of research and papers on it and stuff. So I got a culture of that, and we were, I was selling plates of it and stuff because it was kind of a hard species to get at the time.
Yeah.
And then I, wanted to think of something simpler, so I, was reading a lot about the oyster mushrooms and how well they can kind of do some of this breaking down of molecules and of cellulose specifically. And so I created this little science fair kit for students, which they were kind of training the mycelium to be better able to break down cellulose that was in cigarette butts. So the way I'd set it up is that I'd give them a plate. A plate is just a petri dish, an agar petri dish, so I'll just call it a plate.
Okay.
I'd give them a plate of just regular mycelium, and then I'd give them a plate with the mycelium with a cigarette butt in there. And then by training the mushroom mycelium in the plate with the clean cigarette butt, they'll kind of learn how to digest that cigarette butt. So then you can take that one that was feeding off the cigarette butt and make some further plates out of it, which you do by transferring underneath your laminar flow hood in a sterile environment. And then when you introduce that mycelium that's already been trained on that, what you want it to break down or eat, to dirty cigarette butts, they were well more able to digest that. And so the clean plate was kind of their control, and then the plate with the clean the clean cigarette butt was what you're training it on, and then you'd move that one to dirty cigarette butts, and then the plate without anything to dirty cigarette butts, and see how fast they kind of did their thing.
That's super cool.
So that was the idea for the Science Fair project. I think we sold some in Hawaii, and then a couple other online to people. And it was a lot of fun, It was cool to hear the feedback, and how the kids did, and it really introduced them to mycology.
Yeah.
Getting practice and stuff.
I had a question. Do you have any experience with like revitalizing soil that's kind of dead? So I just moved into a house, and in the backyard, like there's plants everywhere, but it's like it needs help. The soil just looks like super spent. Can mushrooms like help to revitalize that in any way?
Yeah, but you're going to need a supplement, like
Yeah.
the first way that they'd be able to do that is by nutrient fixing. So you're going to have to introduce some sort of new nutrient in there, right? So like say a bunch of wood chips.
Okay.
All right. This is the easiest to do for your garden and stuff. So you're going to get a bunch of wood chips, and that's going to be your substrate that you're going to grow the mushrooms in. And I get some straw, and I put that kind of over the wood chips I inoculate it with, and that will kind of keep the moisture in there. Mm-hmm. And then I'll also lay down layers of cardboard as kind of a barrier from the dirt and then your wood chips or sawdust. If you have access to sawdust, it's a great way. And I've had a couple, different experiments where we're pasteurizing it and then not pasteurizing it. But what we're going to be using for species is the garden giant, the King Strophoria. And that's a great mushroom. It grows, in a lot of different climates. Not too hot, and not too cold, but it's a pretty hardy mushroom. It grows all over. And you're going to inoculate those wood chips with the garden giant, and what that mushroom will do is kind of break down over time all those wood chips, and that will create kind of a compost that then you could kind of mix into your soil, and that will help definitely revitalize it. Adding stuff like biochar is a great way to really revitalize your soil. Putting in nitrogen fixing plants is a great way. Like beans, and other nitrogen fixing plants. So those are both some great ways to kind of rebuild your soil. And if you kind of make a pile of its own of the King Strophoria and let that grow, I've even seen it growing on compost piles. You could throw it in there. But once you get that kind of mound or that area growing really well, you could kind of then take some of that substrate that has it growing in and place it in other areas in your garden. Cool. and grow. And so making mushroom gardens or adding it to your existing garden is a great way. You could put the wood chips on the path and put your spawn in there, or not already inoculated wood chips, add them into other wood chips and stuff. Yeah. And so you're going to need to kind of feed that something every year to have them keep coming back, and so otherwise they'll just kind of eat up all their food sources and kind of peter out. Yeah. Other great ways, like stuff with turkey tail. I see Paul give some examples of like half-burying logs that have been inoculated with wooden dowels. So you can buy spawn plugs, and those are basically just a sterilized wooden dowel that's been inoculated with the mushroom mycelium. Then you drill holes into your log and then pound them in, and usually put some like beeswax, or something over the hole to kind of keep it safe and dry, so it's kind of a barrier. And what will happen is the mycelium will grow throughout that log. It usually takes a little bit longer because it's like hard, dense wood. And then once it's fully colonized, then you'll start getting turkey tails or oyster mushrooms, or shiitakes is one they use a lot of plugs with too. Cool. So all those, and then you can bury them in your garden as you're edging. I've even put like old stumps. I've inoculated those. My neighbor's gotten some reishi mushrooms off of an old stump, and they come up like every year. That's cool. I got some dowels to my old boss, and he's growing shiitakes now right outside his house because he cut down a couple oak trees. and he inoculated him, and they pop up every spring, and he gets a couple pounds of shiitakes per log. It's awesome.
That's cool, man. Dude, you have a lot of knowledge about mushrooms. That's, I don't know, you've been talking for an hour now about it. That's super cool.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I'm really passionate about it. I really love it. I think mushrooms are one of the, really underappreciated miracles of nature, and we're really starting to find out how amazing they are.
It's growing,
and
it's really easy to turn people onto it. I can have like a 5-minute conversation with someone and just tell them some really cool examples, and they're like, "What? Mushrooms? Yeah, they're everywhere. Duh."
and I hope, and I think there is starting to be a lot more like formal education and people requesting it, because I remember in biology class in college and stuff, they kind of glossed over that chapter,
Oh, yeah.
It didn't spend a lot of time in it, as in a lot of other areas, So, I love mushrooms, and I think that they really can, save the planet in a lot of ways. They're changing a lot of industries. We're seeing all these companies like Mycoverse and Ecovative that are making like myco materials, tons of new myco foods, and just a lot more programs that are matching up, especially in underdeveloped areas of the world, where there's labor is easily and readily available, and it's easy. These tropical areas, it's really easy to grow many species of mushrooms, and they're so nutrient and protein rich, and they're really healthy for people, and they're using agricultural waste, which would be burnt or, which is a problem. So, mushrooms, they do this alchemic process of changing something that's not of value into something of high value, and I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, it's super amazing.
So, as a food, we formed Jewels of the Forest, which is our other company, which handles all the food side, and we opened up our commercial kitchen and actually a retail mushroom store in Sebastopol, California last year.
Yay.
And
Good
in
job.
the store, we sell like mushroom grow supplies and like all things mushroom art, a lot of medicinals. We sell the Amadou hats from Romania.
Do you really?
Purses and definitely. I need to make another order because we have like one hat left and one purse.
Do they only make them? Where do you get them from again?
So I met his maker in Romania a couple of years ago, and we were talking online, and I was looking all over for his hats and his products, and he was selling them on Etsy, and we worked out a deal, and so I buy them wholesale from him, and I usually do like a pre-order for people, so I try to get people's sizes and kind of what style. There's a couple of different styles. And then I do a large order from him because shipping's, expensive from that part of the world. And then I send them out to people from our store, or you could come in and buy them. We sell them at the festivals. And I think it's an amazing product. Amadou's just awesome that they can. It's the first an oldest myco material out there, Yeah,
they used to use it for fire. Whenever. Way back in history of our humanity. Very cool, man. Well,
they call it the tinder fungus.
Sorry, I can't say it right now.
Tinder fungus. Otzi, the Iceman, had some on him when the guy that was frozen in the Swiss Alps.
That's right. Wasn't it tethered to his side, like readily available?
That, and he actually had some medicinal mushrooms on him too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's. Mushrooms are great because you can even in cave paintings they have all kinds of references to mushrooms all over. It's really cool. Really
definitely
cool.
Look at the Siberian cultures where Amanita muscaria was a big part of their spiritual and shamanistic rituals and experiences. That's where a lot of people like Santa Claus and the red and white and the reindeer. It's all kind of lead back to this spiritual belief in the use of Amanita mushrooms as a shamanistic journey experience.
Yeah, and it seems like they, through every extinction event on this planet, they've survived. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the spores can survive in space. They actually found spores in like one of these thermal vents, like way down in the bottom of the ocean, and I think that it's like 25 million years old, and it's just like in a dormant state.
That's super cool.
So, as the permafrost, like in global warming and climate change, and the permafrost, is evaporating, who knows what's frozen in there? Some alien mushroom being that's gonna invasion of the body snatchers or something.
Well, I've been reaching out and communicating with two people who were the first two people on the article "Evidence of Life on Mars" that was released this year, where it's not it's still kind of controversial, but there's a lot of evidence pointing towards like these puffballs that are like today growing on Mars, and it's super compelling to like look at that. So hopefully the one girl, I don't remember her name right now, she's from India and she's traveling, she's like, yeah, I'll get back to you, but yeah, hopefully I can talk to somebody about that and learn more about it. It'd be really interesting.
Totally, I'd love to hear that episode. That'd be a good one. Yeah, didn't they have like some pictures where they were saying like, oh, that looks like mycelium, or like some sort of fungi? That,
and then it just looked like it was growing, and so the people who were doubting it were like, no, it's just the wind blowing all the sediment away from it, and that's why it looks like it's growing. They're like, no, like the actual diameter of the thing is growing. So I don't know. I gotta do some more research on it, but I'm looking forward to that one for sure.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, man, we should wrap it up. I really appreciate you doing this right now and continuing the spreading of our knowledge that we're all after here. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's been a pleasure. I love talking about mushrooms, and thanks for talking with me and giving me a place to do it. If I could just kind of plug our jerky company a little bit. So, selling the jerky and making the jerky is really kind of what sustains us to be able to provide our education and put out our videos.
Perfect.
And do what we do and share. So, supporting us by eating our jerky, you not only get a healthy, awesome snack, but, you help promote our ability to educate and provide, resources for people. And on our website for the jerky is shroomjerky.com.
Okay.
And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, either under Shroom Snack or Shroom Jerky.
Cool.
And our company is Jewels of the Forest, and we do all sorts of events. We're going to be at the Telluride Mushroom Festival in August here. So I actually have a bunch of videos from 2017. I just posted one part of the late and great Gary Linkoff talking about psilocybin and therapeutic aspects of it.
Yeah.
And I have a whole hour-long discussion with Dennis McKenna and a bunch of other great panelists on there. So I'll be posting that, and then I'll be filming a lot from Telluride this year, and hopefully, getting some help so we can help get this up on YouTube and let people check them out and learn more about fungi.
It's cool, man. I'm gonna keep following you and watching.
Yeah, awesome, man. And I'll let you know when we get new stuff out. And, yeah, there's so many great new companies and people, coming up in this scene. So keep an eye out, and I definitely guarantee that in the coming years here, mushrooms are going to play an integral part across many industries, like solving a lot of our sustainability and health problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm in the field of environmental science and consulting. I haven't landed a position yet where I can introduce this yet, but that's kind of, I'm keeping my ears out for opportunities, because if I can land a job where I'm on like an environmental consulting team, like definitely gonna try to introduce some micro-remediation into that room. So
yeah, awesome, man. Mushrooms kind of close that permaculture loop, and I can't wait to see mycology and myco-remediation starting to become a big integral part of just permaculture in general and the permaculture philosophy and idea. I've experienced a lot of places where they don't really touch on that, but like they close the loop in the sense that you could be using all your agricultural waste to be producing, mushroom, and then also compost, because you could use your spent blocks and till them right back in your soil, and it's super healthy. So there's a lot of neat stuff coming around, and people in your podcast are the ways that are helping expose people to it. So thank you for what you're doing, and it's been a pleasure talking with you.
For sure, man.